So I want to welcome back our virtual audience. Hopefully you got away from your screen for a little while. And now it's really a pleasure for me to introduce our next session. We have Monique Ruff-Bell and Rich Scarfo. These two have really done some great work in the last 4 or 5 years. As part of ECEF, what we do is we do try to find new voices and we try to get case studies because our goal is to help all of us with peer-to-peer information exchange on how to keep our events relevant and profitable. And I can't think of two events that are more relevant and profitable than these two. So if you'll please take the stage and tell us some of your secrets. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone.
Hello.
So we're here to talk about our two shows and really kind of give you a rundown on our experiences and why we are an experiential show. I just had my show last week, so I'm still kind of pumped with adrenaline. So if I look too excited, you know where it's coming from. And Rich had his show a week before mine.
That's right.
So we are still kind of trying to get out of that mode. We belong on an island somewhere, really. So I just want to talk a little bit about what is Money 2020, what is health. And Money 2020 is a fintech and financial services show. We just celebrated our 10-year anniversary this year. We had a nice little big bash in Vegas. We are hosted every year in Las Vegas at the Venetian. It is the end of October. In a non-COVID year, we have over 10,000 plus attendees. We are an ecosystem show, so anyone that touches money, so if you borrow, save, innovate, or innovate money, you are coming to Money 2020. Every single big bank is there, all of the big major credit card companies, all of the tech firms, Googles, Facebooks, Amazons. Everyone is at Money 2020. And so this year, we thought we would have a little bit of a drop off, but we came up with 8,000 plus attendees that came to our show. We had about 500 sponsors in 2019. We had 420 this year for our show. So we really kind of knocked it out the park, and no one's more surprised than me. So, Rich, if you could talk a little bit about
Sure.
health.
So we had our event about 2 weeks ago, and we were in a very similar situation. So health is just celebrated its 4th event. We had 2 in person, 1 digital, and then we came back in person. Health is set up for the healthcare industry and on the innovation side. So we attract anyone touching the innovation side of technology in health and care. VCs and startups are a big part of our audience, and the innovation arms and venture arms of hospital systems. And Monique and I are connected because the founder of Money 2020 then founded something called an event called Shop Talk, and then health was the 3rd event. So we work in sort of the same family of events. We're very experiential, and we look at our event very much like the retail industry. So you want to create an environment that people want to come into. You want a product that people want. You want to treat them as if they're the most important person at the event, whether they're an attendee, a sponsor, a speaker, or a partner. And we really look at health as a platform for the industry. So we invite everyone in. We have a lot of other events that do activities there. We have a focus on C-suite and senior executive only for our attendees, and our program is very much C-suite. We came into health this year very much like everyone else, uncertain. And 3 months before the event, our goal was to hit 5,000 attendees. And to put that into perspective, in our first year, we had 3,500 at health. The second year, we had 6,500. And our digital event attracted 5,000, and we really overproduced that. We made it something very special and very unique. And it was a very painful process. But coming into health, we thought 5,000 would be a good number for a few reasons. The uncertainty, the delta, and then also catering to the healthcare industry, which was hit very hard. And we saw an explosion probably 6 weeks before the event. So our registration capped at around 7,450. We had 6,500 of those in person, and something that I've never seen, and I mentioned this to Sam, 52 badges were not picked up. And I've never seen a number like that.
Yeah, and we're a premium event as well. Our standard ticket price is $3,599. We are targeting C-suite director and above that come to our show. And for the first time ever, we had over 200 plus walk-ins buy tickets on site at our show in conjunction to what they bought previously. We've never had that before. And you know, the journey to getting to here was a journey. It was convincing our management, our leadership in our global office. We are a publicly traded company. We are owned by a company called Essential, which is based out of the UK. And you know, I know a lot of you were going back and forth. Are we going to do this? Are we going to do this? Are we going to do this? And what we did and why we went forward with it was we want to make sure we put on the best show we could in 2021. Damn the attendance. If we don't get what we want from an attendance perspective, that's fine. But we are going to create so much FOMO at our 2021 show that it is going to set up to surpass our 2022 and beyond goal. We invested heavily into our 2021 show. We only laid off maybe 2 to 3 people out of our entire staff. We got more investment from our global offices for us to put on that particular show. We brought in the creative arm of Cirque du Soleil to come in and have us think about experience very differently. We are very much an experiential show. If you're going to pay that type of ticket price, you're coming for an experience. And so our foundation for our show was connections. We don't call it networking. We call it, how are we going to facilitate connections for you in the easiest way possible? To us, language matters. So how we speak to our community is we do everything that's unboring. We want to facilitate connections. We want to create FOMO. We want to make sure that just because we send you emails, that's fine, but our community is going to be our best word of mouth advertisers, and they did exactly that for us. And I think they did the same for you too.
Yeah, we approach things also very differently in terms of the experiential side. So I heard this morning with Rob and John talking about return on investment and things like that. We focus on a couple of things with the event. So we feel that there's a space in the market for all different types of activities. And for us to come into the market just 4 years ago to fill a new space, we had to do it very differently. Now, I admittedly came on after the first year because I was on the other side with a company that Health was actually competing with. But what we saw were a couple of things. The first was creating something that people looked at and thought, what is this thing? So we have caricatures for all of our speakers. There's a very distinct look for Health. On site, we move away from the large booths, and some of that is due to the nature of our companies being a lot of startups. We had about 1,000 startups at our last event, either attending or exhibiting. We also look at participation in any way that a company wants to. So a company that just wants to attend, that's great. If you want to just be part of our hosted buyer meetings, that works, and if you want a booth, that's good too. So we meet companies where they are. We focus, we have a high price point as well, both on sponsorships and registration. We ended at $3,100, so we're a lot cheaper than Money 2020. But we also had a lot of on-site. And the reason that we see people coming to Health is really, we hear a phrase, cutting through the noise, right? Everyone's busy, and larger events are great for a lot of things. But for those connections and the networking and the hosted buyer, we want to make sure that we're using people's time efficiently. There's peer-to-peer networking with decision makers, which is really the key for us. And they see a return on their investment. And I'll talk a little bit later about a new event that we just launched, and we're using the same format. And I'll talk about the response that we're getting to that based on a lot of this.
Yeah, so for us, our foundation, we are a very strong brand. We have always been a strong brand in the market. We were invested in heavily when we were starting up, and so our growth was very, very fast. We grew very fast in our numbers. And we were on that same trajectory until our friend kind of hit us. But we still came out with a strong show. The number one thing people always say about us is everyone is there. Everyone is there, and that's the language we always want our community to speak about us because they think of us as an efficient show. If I come to Money 2020, everyone's there. I get to have all of the meetings that I would have never had before unless or I have to fly around the world or let alone around the country, but everyone's there. And that's the thing that we play on. We keep saying, we don't have to talk about our show. We're gonna highlight some of our friendlies and our marketing pieces. We're gonna do certain things where we're gonna showcase how we're fostering connections. When people come to a show, we have an app, of course. Everyone's listed in the app. That's fine, but we take it a step further. We wanna make it easier for you to make those connections. So we have something called the Connections Lounge. So we say, you just met someone on that app, you wanna have a meeting. We have a table ready for you. We have a table number. We have a time ready for you, a time slot. Only thing you have to do in that app is press the time you want to meet, come to the Connections Lounge, and that is waiting for you. I had 300 seats, constantly filled every single moment of the day of people facilitating those connections through our app. We wanted to make it easier. We completely tore up our floor plan. We do not do a grid pattern on our floor, absolutely not. We have something called exploration. So how do you make people explore your full floor? We wanted to make the floor the heartbeat of the show. So what we did was we moved all of our stages out of those lovely Venetian ballrooms and put them all into our exhibit hall floor. We have 5 stages built. We had where it's not a grid pattern, it's circles. So you're walking around and you're discovering and you're seeing things you would have never seen before unless you were walking around what we called our yellow brick road. Mm-hmm. And that's what we had. But then we have people that were like, I just want to get to A and B. I don't want to explore. I just need to know where I want to go. So we had a feature in our app where we have a Google Map item in the app. So you are now officially the blue dot. And if you're trying to see that exhibitor over there, it would walk you and show you how to get there or if you were on the right path. Our whole foundation was about how do we make your experience seamless? And I know you did some really cool things as well at your show.
We did. We have custom lounges throughout the event that sponsors design. So we have a designer on staff that works with large companies that are creating not just a lounge for their company, they're very experiential. We bring in a lot of very high-end entertainment, as I know Money does. We also have, our area for networking or connections is called Health Connect, and the same thing there. We looked at with our hosted buyer, we had about 4,000 meetings this year over 3 days. And so that's where we match the sponsors and exhibitors, or what we call the solution providers, with vetted buyers. And it's a very curated program. It's not by chance at all. And I think it's a cornerstone of what both of us do in terms of adding value to the companies. So those meetings, we were down a little bit from the year before because we saw some softness in some of our demographics. So even the numbers, though the numbers were very strong, we did see a shift this year in the demographics, but we see that coming back in 22. We're also, as we grow, we're younger than Money 2020, but as we grow, we're going through some of the same iterations in our event. We got close to a grid system, and now we're moving away from that because the whole concept with coming to our events is that you don't feel like you're at an event. And the best thing that we could hear is somebody saying, I can't wait until next year. And you don't hear that at a lot of events. And I think it also comes down to, we've been lucky enough, I guess I could say that, but we've not been in the same facility once yet. And that's very painful on the team, but it's very exciting for the attendees. We'll go into our 5th facility for our 5th event next year. So.
Yeah, and I think for us, what we came to discover when I say that your community is your best word of mouth advertisers is you can't look at your trade show or your conference just as an educational type focus. It has to be an experience. People are now, we had some consulting companies come in for us, and we did a lot of research even with our community. And before we decided to even go and say we're going to do this, we surveyed our community multiple times and said, if we did this, are you going to come? And 73% of them said absolutely. They knew that they were going to be very, very selective about the events that they were going to go to in 2021. So you absolutely could not do what you did previously. Our NPS shot up eightfold in 2019 from all of the wonderful new things that we did, and we completely trashed it and didn't do it again in 2021. We were like, in order for us to continue to be the event of choice for this particular market, we have to constantly evolve and innovate. It doesn't matter if we did things well before. It doesn't matter if we got all of the kudos before. We have to be different. They're not going to go to 10 events like they used to go back in the day. They're going to pick 2 or 3. And you have to be one of those 2 or 3 that they're going to go to. So we looked at it like, how do we create an experience from every single touch point? If you came into our registration area and there was a line, you were going to see a coffee cart. A coffee cart was going to come around and give you coffee while you're standing in that line, because we knew you were going to flip out your phone and say, look what Money 2020 is doing for us. Yeah. Everything was about FOMO for us. Every touch point was about how are we going to make these attendees pull out their phones? How we're going to make sure that they're posting. So far, we've seen over 4,000 posts about Money 2020 on social media because of what we've done and what we've changed. We made sure when you came into our entrance, we just didn't have an entrance with logos. We had an entrance experience. So we created this piece of artwork that you saw, and then our pillars were on the side of the walls, where it was about, you're coming in, we're gonna have collisions, conversations, connections, and serendipity happen at our show. Everyone pulled out their phone. We had our stages that each had a feeling to them. We had an immersive stage. We had a town circle where you would overhear things and just come to that particular stage. All of our stages were heavily invested into. So we looked at things of what's actually a cost and what's actually an investment. And we had 2 buckets. My F&B is a cost. That coffee carton is investment. Our stages of how we're going to build we're going to have the 5 stages, great, but these stages are going to look great for a reason, because they're going to pull out their phones. That's an investment. And that's the type of language that we continually use as a group to say, okay, what's the experience? What's the investment? What do we need to do that is going to create this FOMO for an even better comeback for 2022 for us?
Yeah, I think the investment piece is really important. We went into the 21 event with a very different discussion. It wasn't where do we cut back and what do we do with the team. We actually expanded our team, and the discussion was how much are we willing to lose this year? Yep. And the reason that we did that is exactly what Monique is saying. We had to bet on the fact that the people would show up, that everything would work out. If it didn't, we'd have a different conversation. But we did see the attendance, we saw the companies. We had the largest sponsor and exhibitor presence this year with over 600 companies. And in a fourth year event, that's pretty strong. But what we invested in, again, was the food. And I actually got some texts from Money 2020 of the food. And I don't know how many events you get pictures of the food coming out of, but that is something that we both really invest heavily in, is the food. We bring, big name entertainment, like I was saying, but we also created areas of the event that companies and individuals felt that they weren't at an event. It's really important that we took this experience and looked at it as something where the healthcare industry was coming back for the first time in almost 2 years. And whether they were there or not, as we said, whether you're here in person, you're here digitally, or you're sitting it out this year, we want everybody to feel some piece of this event. And social media and that type of thing and word of mouth was really important for us.
Yeah, and I think the main thing is innovate and have evolution within your events. Just because it worked and it did well for you previously does not mean it's going to do well for you even if you didn't have your event in 2021 and you're coming back in 2022. You can't do the same. Yeah. You can't do the same thing. These attendees are very different. They are looking at these events in a very different way. They want an experience. They are investing their health and safety. They're investing their time. They want to make sure that they're getting the ROI in return. And in our language that we put out there, we always talk about the ROI. We always talk about how efficient we are, how you can meet people you have never met before, how you don't have to. We say we have 4 months of meetings in 4 days. We constantly say that to them. We constantly put that out to them. It's not about just the speakers you have on the stage anymore. Yeah. That's not always the draw for them. It's how are they getting the connections that they need at your show?
Yeah, I would say on the speaker side, we stick very strongly to C-suite. So this year we had the CEOs of Moderna and Pfizer and a lot of payers and provider systems. And what we like to see is that once they're done speaking, they're actually out on the floor and they're in meetings and they're enjoying the event. And with a lot of events that I've worked for, they show up, they speak, and they leave. And they're ushered in and ushered out. It's really important for us that we're creating an experience that the executive level and the decision maker want to be there and want to stay. Because without them, it's really just a trade show.
And I have something very controversial to say about the speaker part of it. So a majority of our speakers pay. We don't give a lot of comps to our speakers. I know, all the eyeballs. Yes, a majority of our speakers pay for the simple fact that there is so much value that they get. These speakers do not just come and walk off our stages and walk out the door. They're there for the full 4 days. They are immersed in the meetings that they are having. They are immersed in the different experiences that we are given, and there's a value to that. And so they pay. Yeah. And we also have it where our brand is so strong in the market that I might have 200 slots for speakers, and I have over 1,200 plus submissions coming to speak on our stages. That was in 2019. I just knew in 2021 we're gonna have less. Like, nobody's gonna wanna speak. We had 1,000. We still had 1,000. It was crazy.
You know, I'll add to all of what we've been talking about something that I think is really important too, and it goes into the investment and the decision-making process. Everything that happens at your event, you should take responsibility for. So we look at everyone there as a customer, and everything that you do at a high-profile event matters. And I say that because we've been through the last 2 years where not everybody's made the right decisions. And we're now in a position as Health, the company, which we also built beyond an event. So we started as an event and we built it into a company with a digital series of products, with a health expert network, with salon type dinners that we put on hold for a bit, but they're coming back. And our content outside of the event helped make all of the connections with these executives throughout the year and gave them a touch point for us. And where we're headed right now is by looking at another opening in the industry. We've launched a new event that will take place in March in South Beach for health IT and digital health. And that event will premiere with about 500 companies on the floor. And we've done that because we looked at two things. Again, that need in the industry, but also what was coming into our event that we didn't want there. So we had an influx of companies and attendees that we said they're not the right fit for our event. So we actually turn away about 25% of our sponsor requests. And we do that because our event has to remain focused on innovation. It is not a traditional health IT event. Our new event will now open the door for that, and I think it will launch about the size of Health in its third year, or what would have been its third year.
Yeah, and I think what we want to walk away, and kind of some of the golden nuggets here, is you have to innovate constantly for your shows. One of the things that we did a lot of, that we started in 2019 and really expanded on in 2021, was how to make a big show feel small. Yep. It's the intimacy, it's the intimate moments that you create, it's those collisions that you create that are small but very impactful that people talk about constantly. Yeah. We have something called the First Timers program. What you have to do, it's easier to keep them than it is to find them. So the first thing that we do when we think about our first timers is how do you elevate their experience beyond something they've never had before to make it easier to bring them back.
We came back this year, and one of the things I think was tied to our surge in attendance is, we did the obvious things. You had to be vaccinated, you had to wear a mask, but we announced about 2 months out from the event that you also had to be tested. So we tested 4,200 people at our front door. Or you had to show a PCR test within 72 hours. And we thought this is either going to be an absolute nightmare, or it'll work really well, but we thought it's going to be a nightmare. So how do we fix that? And it goes back to the experience. So what we did is we took the entire entrance to the BCEC and we created a first line of check-in, second line was healthcare workers testing, and then the main part of the lobby was the waiting area. So you had to go there and wait. they said 20 minutes, but we knew it was going to be more like 30 or 35. So what we did is we created a puppy park within that. We had champagne and smoothies being given out, but also I feel it's really important for the head of an event not to only be seen on stage or in an executive meeting. So what I did, and our founder John, we were actually in the waiting area asking who's been there, close to 30 minutes, and we went and got their badges for them. And we made hundreds of connections, and people would look and say, why are you here? And our response was to make sure that you have an amazing experience at our event. So I think that kind of approach is really important.
And that speaks to wholeheartedly about making sure that you have those moments that make people pull out those phones and talk about your event constantly. I know people are like, social media, my demographics is most of my attendees are 40 plus. But they love to pull out those phones too. They love to post on their LinkedIn.
What's wrong with 40 plus?
I'm just saying, they like to be on social media too, and they like to talk about that they were somewhere as well. So it doesn't matter. But it's all about making a big show feel small.
That's right.
What are the major moments that you're having every single day that is creating that intimate moment for some of your key attendees at your show, because they're never going to forget it? Sam, you were getting up. Do you have questions?
In 1 minute and 42 seconds, give or take, does anyone have one particular question or comment that they'd like to share? I'll take the minute and 30 seconds. What both of you have shared is amazing, and I think as far as sometimes better to be lucky than smart. When I put the two of you together, you had never met, correct?
Last night.
Well, the first time you met in person was last night, but the first time you met in Zoom was 3 weeks ago.
That's right.
So the fact that they meshed so nicely on stage, the give and take was so organic. We're looking at the future here, folks. This is people who are talking about investing, people who the top bosses are getting badges for people who are waiting, and you can never ever bet against a puppy park.
That's right.
Anybody have a question or a comment? All right.
We did our job.
So
Yes.
Sam, I'll add one last thing. My first job was 37 years ago, and my first boss was Sam. And no, but
And he was a total pain in the ass.
I was.
Look at him now.
But what I think is really important is along the way, the people that you can learn from, you should, and you stay in touch with them. And I've had an amazing run of people that I've worked for. There's still things that Sam instilled in us as a team that I carry today. So I think mentors along the way are really important.
Wow, and that's a 0 time. On that note, thank you very much.